Do you think?
Apparently. One of them was Backlund of Clan Stoneshaft. He was a dwarf tending bar at the Quaffing Quaggoth. There was Cyril Flacken, a fat, balding man who's a horse dealer at the Flacken stables. There was Naniatha Laristar. She was an olive-skinned beauty with raven hair who worked as a courtesan at the palace in her own home. And there was Jurisk Olhamond, who was a mousy-looking man, looked older than his age, who was a moneylender and leader of the Trades Ward cell. Unfortunately, he may have gone the way of Nindle. So he was the one infiltrator, one successful infiltration at the time of the Red Sashes.
Mm-hmm. And just to update in the relation to the Red Sashes, I think, Ed, in some information that we chatted about, you basically said the unseen weren't as powerful in the 1480s Dale Reckoning Waterdeep as they were in the late 1300s Dale Reckoning. So,
yes, yeah.
So all of their infiltration of things like the Red Sashes and the Lords and the etc. all seem to have been blasted away, stripped bare by the effects of the spell plague, and they started infighting and turned on themselves. So if you had big unseen plans, capital U, for yourself, for your campaigns, you can ignore that situation and you can have the Red Sashes dominated by the unseen, or the Lords for that matter, or whatever. But in terms of, if I was writing about Waterdeep in 4th edition, and heck, we've already done that, or 5th edition, everyone's done that. But the bottom line is that you can choose to have the unseen as still being major parts of these organisations, or you've got the out of saying, no, they're no longer part of these organisations, and basically manipulating them and controlling them to a significant
or if your
degree.
players have read too many books, then they might still be strong, but not the ones that were listed.
That's right. You change it up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're on the docks.
I'm leaving. I'm like, cultists, all this, the unseen, the Red Sashes, rats.
Well, the contacts for the Red Sashes in Dockward are actually 2 courtesans from, this is in the late 1300s, Dale Reckoning. In fact, there's two lots. There's 2 courtesans at the Purple Palace who are contacts for the Red Sashes, and there's a dockhand who spends most evenings at the Sleeping Snake, which a tavern. So there is lots of Red Sashes contacts in Dockward, probably more than any other ward throughout the city, which is kind of interesting. Makes you think that maybe the Red Sashes have more work to do in Dockward, and perhaps it's a more convenient place to get rid of problems or make them disappear.
Waterfront property is the most valuable, you know.
Yeah.
But I would bet that there's probably some, at least a couple of Red Sash contacts in Trades Ward, in Lower Castle Ward, in South Ward, definitely. But is that their main bailiwick? No, that's the Dock Ward. And generally, that's where they're needed the most, honestly. But there's exactly what form you want them to take, I guess, is up to individual GMs as to how much they want to make that a focus of their Waterdeep experience, I guess. For
the full Waterdeep experience.
Well,
so
you must go to the Quaffing Quaggoth.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, are there any places, Ed, or anybody actually, Stephen, George, Eric, is there any place that you would recommend a DM suggesting that their players go to? And
how do you mean? In what context?
In context, what's a good place?
Are we drinking or sleeping?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're adventurers. They're doing both at the same time. So, come on.
You can't always do that at the same places. There are inns that tell you can't drink here. Out you go.
Well, I guess I'm more saying, are there areas that you fleshed out a little bit more that would be helpful to a DM that's maybe putting their players into Dock Ward or in that area that they could go for information?
Well, actually, Dock Ward is the easiest to insinuate because insinuate anything you want into, because it's in theory the most lawless ward. Okay, aside from the brand new ward that was introduced right in the north of the city, the slum, that was put in 5th edition.
Sure.
It's and it's the most lawless ward, unless you're playing Waterdeep at the time when Mistshore is still going. And what that really means is it gives the Dungeon Master carte blanche to put in anything they want. It's the easiest. In terms of what's fleshed out the most, I must admit to a predilection when I was running Waterdeep early on, before it was anything published. We spent a lot of time in Dock Ward and Castle Ward and Trades Ward, and then they went into North Ward and Sea Ward to attend Noble Rebels and to try and various of the less law-abiding adventurers went there because, hey, maybe we can break in and steal something from one of these high fancy houses where I'm sure to have a lot of treasure, sort of thing. But other than that, we were spending most of our time in Dock Ward because that felt like where adventurers would feel at home.
Right. So I do actually have a question here from Brian Cortillo.
Uh-oh.
See,
Hi.
Hey, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Depends. That's the answer.
It depends. There you go. So Brian,
Azun. The answer is Azun.
Its answers are Zune. Brian, who's actually going to be in one of our future podcasts for Cormier, for our Cormier expert. So Suzail, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, he's asking. Let's say I'm a successful adventurer that's recently come into possession of some fairly powerful magic. My party has just rather unstealthily returned to the city via ship. How quickly can I expect the lords to find out about what I've obtained? And how can I expect Laryl to respond to knowledge that I may have infernal or other nasty magic at my disposal?
Well, that depends. It depends on how high profile your adventurers are, how high profile their gaining of this stuff was, whether they bragged about it. In other words, are the people in Waterdeep starting to play detective from a standing start? Are they just surveilling everybody coming in, and how quickly do they find out? Or are they waiting for you? And when those guys show up, we got to make sure we take the cursed finger ring off them because they already know about it. But let's assuming they're going from a standing start. It depends on how you behave. In other words, if you start trying to flog it, or if you start trying the diabolical items, or if you start trying to use them in the middle of a street in broad daylight, or whether you just pretend you don't have anything unusual and just go to your usual haunts and shop at your usual stores. The old thing of, hey, I'm in Waterdeep again. I got to go to that great comic shop, or whatever. If you go to your usual haunts and behave normally, it may take them quite a while to discover that you're carrying something. If you're subtle about whether you want to unload it, or hide it, or have it securely stored, or trade it to somebody. Hey, can I finally get the Moon Penguin of Boof to take home if I give
Not the Moon Penguin of
But
Boof.
yeah, I mean,
that will depend on how quickly there's a reaction from somewhere. And of course, some of the other reaction from Laryl and so on is, and when Kelvin was in Blackstaff Tower, this would have been to the fore. He wants to watch you and see what you're going to do with it before he makes his move. And he's also, live by the sword, die by the sword. If you're going to be adventurers and you're going to blow yourselves up, I'll watch. My job is to put out the fire, not to stop you blowing yourself up. Because, adventurers will be adventurers.
Yeah, I mean, my take on this whole thing is if it's something that they're watching for, chances are the alarm bells may go off the minute it hits Cobblestone 1. So if you're bringing the Moon Penguin of Boof into the city and the Lords have a reason to be watching for it, they'll know the second it's there. Now, they may not be able to track it down exactly, but they'll be on the watch for it.
Mhm.
I would also say that you've got to remember what the context was when you acquired it.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of items, maybe you're not the only group going after the item, and you happen to win in the dungeon and acquire the item, and you walked out of the dungeon successfully. Maybe you even made it overland through the wilderness because it's hard to track you in the wilderness with the item. But then you get to the city, and everybody has spies in a city like Waterdeep, and so, you know, this is essentially the second shot of all the rival power groups to get it. So there are other groups who will get drawn into it once they learn that there's something of interest. But the first groups to go after you will be the ones that know that the Company of the Stag has the Moon Penguin of Boof, and they stole it from us before we could steal it from the dungeon. So our next chance to get it is in the city. And you know what? They even have a nice bone in their body. So let's attack them while their innocents around, right? It's essentially putting their hands behind their back a little bit, you know. So that to me is what's going to trigger it the most. What I see happen over and over again, I'm not pointing fingers at any dwarves or anything like that, is the players will do something like walk up to a bartender like he's the soul of discretion and say, "Where can I find the guy who might like to buy magical penguins?" in a loud voice.
I never did that, I swear.
No, Jeff, you never did that twice.
Twice, that's right.
Yeah. Well, now I'm thinking, you know, the counter adventuring groups are watching you, and the minute they close to try and take it from you, a group of helpful people come along and they help you defeat them and escort you to the Elfstone Tavern area, and they know that you've just uncovered this, you know, priceless artifact from a former Elven realm, and they're just waiting to get you to relax and be off your guard, and then they'll slide it out of your backpack and take it for themselves, you know. So there's 3 or 4 layers of who's here to help you, who's here to harm you, who's just after what you've got in the backpack.
In fact, probably the thing that's best going to keep you from dying is the fact that multiple groups will go after you simultaneously.
Oh yeah,
trip over each other and fight
trip
each other.
over each other. Yeah,
and that gives you your chance to escape and go, hey, maybe the bartender isn't the best person to ask in a loud voice.
Here's again. Go
and
on.
your point is,
Brian's question is a good one though, because I think I know what he's trying to get at, which is something different, something not as common, turning up on the docks, whether in terms of people or a type of cargo or the look of a type of cargo, is bound to raise some suspicion. So my thought went to, do the Lords monitor that stuff in the context of having some guild mages who, if they see something that they think is interesting or something they should look at more, they whip out a detect magic spell or a detect evil spell or something along those lines, or even a true seeing, or have, a particular magic item that gives them true seeing to look at to see whether what looks different or suspicious or unique is what it should be. Because if old Baron the Trader has turned up for the every month like he always does with his haul of coal out of Firemaster, no one's going to bat an eyelid. And that's where you would put your artifact in his coal wagon, because he delivers to Waterdeep every month. But when the caravel comes into port, no one's ever seen it before. The adventurers come out. They say, no, we'll unload our cargo ourselves. They take out 3 coffers, very carefully and delicately, and then start walking off to find a tavern to stay at. That's got to cause everyone to go, geez, I wonder what the hell's in there. That looks special, looks different. Right. It looks.
But they're not gonna attack people on the waterfront and make a big thing of it, because
No.
job one is to keep Waterdeep as a welcoming cosmopolitan port where everything goes, as long as you're law-abiding and so on. So anything they do is going to be a little more subtle. It's not going to be attack you on the docks or what have you got in there.
If it was something that, for example, if it was something that detected as mega evil, like it's like a big red shining beacon thing, would the lords ask for a meeting with these people? Would they send an intermediary? Would they summon them to the Lord's court? Would they do any of those things, or do something else instead?
I think they'd wait to see where they went first, because that gives you a lead on, are they working with anybody in Waterdeep? Are they working? Is this another of these GD noble families who is always trying to meddle for more power? And if they, so let's see where they go first. Is a guildmaster working with them? Let's see where they go. And the moment they then take rooms and so on, where to rent their usual rooms at the inn or wherever. You know where to find them. So you stick a watcher there. Then you go and then you watch to see where they go. If they don't go anywhere except, let's unpack, let's have a bath, let's have a good meal. So in the middle of the good meal, about the third decanter of wine is being delivered. And that's when someone pulls up a chair around the table and says, "Hi, I'm from the castle." Now, we couldn't help but be a little curious about it'd be like that. Is there somewhere we could go and talk about this? And of course, the somewhere where they're going to talk about this, if they want to cut up rough, that's when the big ambush, because this guy who is coming to talk to them, he has backup. He's not alone, because otherwise his body would just be found floating in the harbor the next day, or stuffed down the sewers or whatever. But the whole point is nothing should disrupt the port running at full tilt in public. But yeah, there would be an investigation and they would want to know what's going on. But the thing is, it's usually better to let people hang themselves. I mean, it's usually better to let people reveal their own intentions before you come to heavy. Let them show you where they're going in Waterdeep and who they're meeting with first. Then you can come in and say, And that's the difference between having Laeral as the open lord, who learned exactly that from Kelvin, is let them hang themselves. Leave them out a little bit. Purgarin was a bit more, nope, we see this problem, stop it. Yep, that's right.
And so I would also throw something else in, too. They are... in a city the size of Waterdeep, there's probably also some stuff going on that has nothing to do with the players.
Always.
A party of adventurers, particularly with a dangerous item, are actually a way to kind of shake up the table that's being played right now in the plot. So so if let's say Noble House X is in the middle of some sort of stratagem, and the lords are well aware of it, and they're trying to figure out sort of who else is involved, and they're not moving yet, but they know there's more players and they're not exactly sure what's going on. One way to handle that is to keep watching, of course, but then you might miss something. The other is, if your watching is not really accomplishing what you're hoping, you could kind of throw a curveball into the mix by, somebody says, "Oh, this noble lord, he's got some information." He doesn't know jack shit about the actual thing that you've got, but the very act of you going to him is going to trigger the slow moving plot and make it boil quickly, which may well be the goal of the lords. And so that kind of thing could happen too, where it's unrelated to what you're doing and what you've brought, but you're a useful weapon to shake up the table.
Yep.
Well said. You could play it like the influence of the One Ring, where even people that aren't even aware of this thing, there's a pull towards it. There's an attraction, subtle but it's unmistakable, and people will react to it. Alternately, instead of having people react, have the animals react. Your party is walking down the street, and for some reason, every passing cart has the horse freaking out as they get anywhere near you, or everybody's dogs avoid you, whatever.
Or
it
they
might be.
growl. Yeah.
We've got some
No.
specifics here from Brian.
Right. I was just going to go into, but it makes me think of a second part. Eric, thanks for bringing that up.
Just quickly, one last question
Yeah.
I've got of Ed is, and this might be too modern, real worldy, so it probably doesn't exist. Is, does Waterdeep have the equivalent of customs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We already covered that, I thought.
Yeah, we covered that with coming off the docks, because otherwise, it's not just that you want to get your taxes on things, and you also want to make sure and keep tabs on, because remember, Waterdeep is a member of the Lord's Alliance. You want to see if somebody is accumulating weapons, like stockpiling weapons, armor, tons of arrows. Somebody's up to something. We got to watch where that goes. So, yeah, you're going to have a customs inspection, but it's going to be cursory. And you're also going to have a thing where some people can be bribed to sort of make their inspection be... for those of you who've seen the movie A Fiddler in the Roof, where Tevier is insisting he goes to see this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, when there's the big thing, and he says, "Right, I've seen it." Like he opens the door and goes, "Yeah, I've seen it," and turns and walks away. There can be some of that sort of inspection. But whenever that happens, you see they're corrupt, but they're not corrupt. They play along. And whenever that happens, remember Waterdeep, there's always a spy watching the spy.
Right.
So that's when your watcher, who's been watching the customs guys, knows that he's got to pay really special attention, because they were willing to pay extra to have that inspection be cursory. So they're hiding something. Is it something small and embarrassing for them, or is it something we need to know about? They won't rest until they know which it is.
And
Now, it could be something they just let go, because they don't mind when merchants do each other dirty. They do mind if it's going to shake the foundations of the world.
So if you didn't declare your...
Sorry, go ahead.
If you didn't declare your evil artifact, but let's just say you're just using Waterdeep as a transit point because you need to get it to, the clearing in the forest where you can unleash Armageddon on the realms.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't...
As one does.
That's what it does.
Because every campaign wants to get that to that stage. But
you see again.
I can assume that'll be fine as long as nothing bad happens in Waterdeep relating to that artifact. Then the Lords will let you leave, and then it's not a problem.
Sure. Well, like we said before, they're going to want to watch and see where you go and what you do, because they can learn more from that than moving in. If you start using it in Waterdeep to demolish city blocks, then they have to move.
Yeah.
Right.
But if you don't, they want to watch and see what you're going to do with it. That's more important to them than coming to heavy. And as you say, if they let you take it outside the walls, well, there's going to be a lot less urban renewal damage done in Waterdeep once you're outside the city walls. And if they decide, well, it's really not our problem anymore because they took it out, good. We can go and have tea then. Mm-hmm. I don't have to get my armor dirty or whatever, so there's some of that too, but they want to see what you're going to do first before they, it's not the, I'm in charge here, I have to be seen to be boss. That's the one thing in Waterdeep they've moved beyond, because they've seen it all already. It's like they've got nothing left to prove.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Remember, like you said, there's somebody watching no matter what.
Yeah.
And you're talking the Lords, the Watch, that's just the law end. You've got the magical end, whether it's the Guild of the Watchful Order or other various and sundry individual operators. You've got the religious end, which we haven't even gone anywhere near. If you bring an evil artifact into town, chances are there's a large number of temples that if you get within, spitting distance of them, they're going to know what you've got, and they're going to have a word to have with you.
Right.
Are we talking, is it a matter of, is it a fiscal responsibility? Is it a legal responsibility?
Do you have a few
moral
minutes to
expo-
discuss how the
responsibility?
Lord AO can?
Do you have a few minutes to discuss the Lord?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you felt the embrace of Lord Tempest recently? That sort of
Or,
thing.
or Lady Leviathan.
Yeah.
So Brian had a follow up to that. He said, for argument's sake, let's say that where is it here? That's an iron flask with an infernal creature inside, and you
I drink it.
You drink it. There you go. And you're taking
Like a
that
living
to you're taking that to a noble revel that Laryl might be attending. And I have a second part of that question you can answer afterwards. Is in Dock Ward or any of the wards, actually, are there points that are set up that are detectors, not people, but wards that are set up to detect powerful magic, evil magic, not just around the temples? But if I get off a ship and walk in, go over to one of the streets, am I going to set off a silent alarm that gets somebody in the watch notified saying, hey, this guy's got some heavy magic on him?
La 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 la.